Within the risk knowledge area, there are 5 processes: risk management planning, risk identification, qualitative risk analysis, quantitative risk analysis, and risk response planning. In this section, we'll review the inputs to the first process, risk management planning. All of the risk planning processes will be covered in this chapter. Risks represent threats and opportunities. They impact a project in one way or another and represent uncertainty. It's important to articulate potential risks and the actions to take if risks are realized. Risks exist on all projects, and the potential that a risk will occur depends on the risk itself. Risks should be named and monitored throughout the project, and the consequences of those risks, whether they're good or bad, need to be planned for. Another perspective on risk planning is that the project manager is trying to strike a balance between documenting the risks and the risk tolerance of the stakeholders. Plans can then be made to mitigate a risk based on this risk tolerance. Let's look at the inputs for determining this risk management plan. All of the inputs include enterprise environmental factors, organizational process assets, project scope statement, and the project management plan. Let's review these in more detail. The key element of the enterprise environmental factors is the risk tolerance levels of the organization and the stakeholders. As I mentioned earlier, knowing the stakeholders' risk tolerance levels will guide the project manager in the risk response planning. That approach would be documented in the risk management plan. For organizational process assets, the key elements are guidelines and organizational policies, specifically risk policies. You're looking for information on how to approach risk that may influence your planning and other project plans, like cost and schedule. There may be a risk management group within the organization, and there may be risk management templates that you should use for documentation of risk. You should also review the project scope statement, specifically the objectives and deliverables, because these should be the first clues as to what risks the project might be facing. In the project management plan, just as in the review of the scope statement, you should look at each of the elements within the plan to identify potential risks within the project. Of course, as with all the other plans, it provides guidance on what the risk plan requirements are. In the next section, we'll cover the only tool and technique for developing the risk plan and the only output from this process.